Okay,
All
we're
right.
live.
All right. I don't know what to say. I'll just pretend I'll just pretend Daisy and I are driving to another Tulsi
Yeah.
sign event or something, and then we find nothing, no problem to find stuff to talk about.
I mean, it's been a slow news week, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How about you want to start with that
Who's got their
that
favorite
that
topic?
that man, that 75-year-old man in Buffalo
Oh yeah.
who fell and hit his head, and then the police kept walking right by him. Now, I just was looking at Twitter this morning, and there's all kinds of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of outrage, and rightly so, but there's also the conspiracy side from the right saying, well, the guy, he had a little tube coming from his ear, and obviously he had
Oh
a
Lord, I
little
hadn't heard
blood
that.
packet, pasted on him. So he was just an agitator and whatever, probably funded by the Russians. I mean, if you ask Susan Rice, but uh,
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I mean, but pretty overwhelmingly, uh, people are, they see it for what it is and they're outraged.
Well,
And
so like, yeah, it's true. Definitely, like all the white people of the country are going to say they knocked down grandpa and made him,
right,
gave him a
right,
concussion, right? So
right.
it's very interesting that, but it's one of like many examples of, real terrible use of excessive force we've seen. Um, but there was a whole things that are very unique about it. Like it was like just him and like 20 cops all around him, and they knocked him down. You visibly see the blood coming from his ear, and everyone walking
Well,
by
that's
anyway.
it. I mean, that
It
was the
was horrific.
real
Yeah,
outrage was not
yeah,
just that they pushed him down, which was controversial. They said, well, maybe he just lost his balance and fell backwards. I think he was pushed. But I mean, the fact that they just walked by him, and one cop knelt down and was trying to assist him, and the one behind him just pushed him and said, let's keep going, keep going.
right.
As if this is not our concern.
Now they pushed, like a young guy pushed him fairly hard with like a check
Okay.
kind of thing. I think an elbow, arm up kind of thing. It was mostly because the guy was an older, frailer guy and off balance that he fell back and that happened, right? But using force against this guy that is no threat is silly in the first place, and then just leaving him there
Right.
bleeding was horrible,
Well, and
right?
they lied about it as well until
Right.
until the video proved otherwise.
And meanwhile, like de Blasio in New York, I know that was in Buffalo, but de Blasio in New York and Cuomo are saying like they haven't seen use of excessive force.
Well,
Like
Cuomo
Cuomo actually said that.
he did criticize that he saw the video of
He
the 75
he
year
did
old
come back and
guy.
criticize that particular thing, but he had that might have been a kind of reaction to he had recently right before that said he didn't see any use of excessive force, and he almost got like antagonistic, like how can you say that about our police force? It was kind of horrible. I think it basically crossed him right off any possibility of being considered if Joe Biden falters.
Well, I don't know about
Well,
that,
he
but
falters. He falters
um,
every day, but
right, right, right. Yeah, there's some interesting dynamic going on between police forces and government, because obviously there's a lot of tension between the governor of Minnesota and the mayor of Minneapolis and these city and state police forces, right? I mean, it seems like it's almost like they're afraid of them. Like they're afraid in Minneapolis, they're afraid of the police union and that guy Kroll, who's the head of the police union. And you think, oh, well, we're all for unions, right? But I mean, basically,
oh,
the police union is just a uh, cover for protecting, you know, protecting the police at all costs, no matter
yeah,
what they do.
I'm sure there's a politics involved of being afraid of the police union's power.
I mean,
Absolutely.
he's also a big Trump supporter. This guy Kroll in Minneapolis.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's kind of like they are empowered by Trump's rhetoric and have been all along. But I mean, I think I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I get the sense that there's a feeling that they are on a mission to kind of like keep order against these rabble rousers who may be, Antifa or leftist or whatever, or just, people that they feel should be put down. I mean, I just feel like there's a real antagonism between the police force and the community that they're policing. And it goes down to this division. You've heard about the warrior policing versus the community policing. And in fact, in Minneapolis, there is that warrior policing, which means you treat everyone as potential enemy who's potentially going to kill you. And you actually, when you encounter anybody on the street, you're supposed to think of how you might respond if they try to kill you, that you're going to be able to kill them. So there's a real, and there's this whole warrior program that has been banned by the Minneapolis police, but the Minneapolis police union will pay for any cop who wants to have this warrior training. And apparently it's not just a Minnesota thing, it's a national thing. So it's kind of like an underground, almost like an underground political, and maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it seems like there's this real change in attitude among some or a lot of police departments, not just individual police cops.
I've stored up like 20 things to say, but I think let's
yeah,
get
sorry,
Daisy in here.
I'll shut up. Okay, you guys go. Daisy, okay, I'll shut up for the next 10 minutes. All right.
And my memory's not that good, so you're going to lose the top 19.
That's all right. Just whatever. Go
it's
with it.
supposed to be an organic conversation that we're having, right? So, okay, so yeah, I have lots that I want to say from what we were talking about from the beginning. Okay, so the one thing that I wanted to say about the incident with the old man falling back, I think he did lose his balance, but obviously he was pushed. It's not like the guy shoved him. It's not like that girl in New York that was shoved by that police officer and then ended up having a seizure. And,
Right.
I believe she's still, I don't know if she's still hospitalized or not, but imagine having that sort of incident happen to you and then seeing how marching, But I did want to talk about how with the incident with the old man, that if you look at who actually stopped, it was all the police officers kept going, but this person that stopped, that kneeled down and stopped, because you can tell by the different uniforms that they have on. I thought that was quite that these police officers. So the fact that it was the National Guard's people that stopped, it really tells the separation that the police have from the communities that they're supposed to serve, which that is the central message of what is going on right now. It's not supposed to be all of these other things that it's turned into, because now there's this focus on the looters and the rioting. I think that there's many reasons for that being the central focus of what's going on, because it takes over the message that of the things that we actually want to bring about as change. They're not being the things that we're talking about. Instead, we're having to talk about all these other things. The central focus is supposed to be about how police brutality is something that is ubiquitous. It's not this whole argument of that it's a few bad apples here and there. It's such BS, it doesn't exist. If that was the case, then you wouldn't see all these different examples of these police forces that are taking matters just way too far. And it's because with the Standford experiment, we already know about the way that power corrupts, right? And the fact that you have these police unions that obviously, when you break it down, what it comes down to is just corruption. It's always corruption. That is the central thing that always everything always comes down to corruption. Everywhere you look.
So you're talking political corruption and power of police unions kind of thing?
Well, like how you were talking about how that the central issue is these police unions, they're carrying the narrative, right? And it's because of the fact that these police unions are so powerful that these cops don't ever see any form of justice, right? And
right.
They run with impunity, which is very dangerous to have the people that are supposed to be bringing about peace. They're supposed to be peace officers. Instead, what they're doing is bringing about more chaos.
Right.
And
Well, they're like stormtroopers. I mean, You know,
Yeah.
and the contracts, it's written into the contracts that, like, you know, if there's any disciplinary action taken, it's expunged after 6 months or whatever a period of time. I know that's in the Minneapolis police contract. So they basically push these contracts onto the city, and they're intimidated into accepting them. I mean, I have no other explanation why that's
Yeah.
going on.
So my feeling is that, so first of all, whether or not, um, rolling back here a little bit, whether or not, you know, Trump is a specific cause, his rhetoric, you know, obviously can exacerbate people that don't think for themselves to some extent, right? But were police forces capable of this, and have they exhibited this behavior before Trump? Of course,
Right.
right? And I think a big factor, I think there are a lot of, you know, like good cops, but I think they're not enough in the mix, and the political you know, needs of the group, that where they have this blue wall, right, where you basically, you don't tell on a cop, because a cop can't go to jail because his life would be in danger in jail. I think all these things play in. I think the people that aspire to be cops, and I think the selection and the beating down of, you know, individual will that happens, like in a army, can happen in army force, right, at the lowest ranks. I think that's all involved, right? But there's been a lot of really interesting talk about, do we dissolve police forces as they currently exist, and what do we then have for a safety force, and what do we want? I mean, there's been really fascinating discussions around that.
It's not going to happen. I mean,
Yeah,
and this, first of all, I mean, you're right. This started way before Trump. Trump just gave voice to it, but there
right.
has been a shift in police departments from being more bipartisan to definitely being more militaristic. And this all started with Homeland Security and, you know,
Right.
arming of police departments with military
Yes.
weapons. So that changed
Right.
uh, the whole, you know, shift. That changed the shift from community policing to you know, interacting with the community. And some police departments are probably still
Right.
focused on that, you know, where they're actually required to go out and talk to people and just try to build
Yeah.
ties with the community. But the shift generally, it's been from that to a more, you know, warrior, militaristic mentality.
And there's a real problem. There's a real problem with boys with their toys kind of thing here. I mean, putting these people on the streets with rubber bullet guns, they're gonna use them. They're
Right.
gonna see somebody that ticks them off.
The
You know.
Standford Experiment. It was.
I'm sorry. You have to elaborate on that, because I'm not familiar.
That was Philip Zimbardo, who is
Okay.
he's still around. He's a really interesting guy. He did
Yeah.
this research at Stanford University back in the late 60s, early 70s.
I thought it was 72. I want
70, that sounds about right. Okay, so it's during that
You
period.
guys read books, don't you?
Yeah.
What am I doing here?
He's been, I've seen him interviewed before. He was on Democracy Now, like, you know, when I used to watch Democracy Now many years ago, but he did this experiment at Stanford where they divided grad students into two groups, prisoners and the guards, right? So they actually kind of had this mock thing, and it went on for a period of days. It was supposed to go on for about a week. What they did is they experimented with, you know, see how they would react to the situations, and what happened after the third or fourth day of the experiment, it started going, you know, wrong, because the guards started actually getting sadistic towards the prisoners, and they actually had to call the experiment off because they were getting so sadistic towards the prisoners that, I mean, nowadays you couldn't do that kind of experiment. It would violate ethical principles.
Yeah.
You know, but back then,
well, I am familiar with. I am familiar with that experiment. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the one.
Yeah, I think there absolutely is that groupthink behavior, and there's that peer pressure and all that involved, right? That does end up.
It's ultimately, it's this thing where power does corrupt. If you look at why is it that when officials come into power, why is it that they change? Because that power that they have corrupts them. They are not able to see things in the same light. Because they are taken over by whoever's in their bubble, you know, whoever surrounds them, whoever they're listening to. That's what we're seeing a lot with Trump. Even if you want, like the people that believed in his populist message, which I'm not saying that I do believe in that. I'm saying that the people that did believe in him, he may have wanted to change all of these things when he first went in, but when you surround yourself by all these people who have shown that they only work on the behalf of their holders, then what do you expect? There's already a historical precedent, even with Obama, when the hope and change president, right?
Right.
That he was going to go in and do all these things. He did nothing for Black people, first of all, which that's what the one thing that people hold on to so dear, is that he's our first Black president, which, okay, but what did he do for Black people? He did nothing, and specifically because he did not want to be labeled as the Black president.
Well, okay, I would go so far as to say there's a connection between the economy and the neoliberal agenda and these public unrest. I mean, and Black Lives Matter and everything, and racism in general. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a long time, and Obama represented that neoliberal agenda, which, it's fine to bomb people of color in other countries, as long as we give lip service to civil rights here. But the economy is really, we're still going to bail out the billionaires and the banksters and maybe give a few crumbs to everyone else. But the government works for these people. And I think people are kind of waking up to that. But as far as the right goes, and Trump represents, this kind of nationalist, they see, okay, the country's gone downhill. What's happened? Well, it used to be so great in the 50s, right? Everything was, everything worked like clockwork. And what happened? Well, obviously all these people are just, they're living off the dole, and we just had, these people just aren't taking responsibility. So we have to put them down. I think that's the mentality of that someone has to be blamed for the problem, and Trump started with China, but now it's like it's maybe there are people are influenced by Antifa, but it's all these even a 75-year-old guy is standing up, and these people are a threat to the system and need to be put in their place. I think that is a phenomenon that's going on, and I also have a historic parallel. Do you want me to bring that in now, or do you want me to?
But before you go into that, this is also one of the reasons why they have fought so hard to make sure to quelch any sort of dissidence in America. And that's why they've gone after these leaders who have put their country first, right? In trying to bring up the indigenous people of their country and people of color leg up. It's always a neoliberal class that has gone against these leaders. And that's why we see ourselves in the situation that we're in Honduras, in Venezuela. If you look at, again, and this type of unrest is not just going on here in the United States, it's going on everywhere. But we have not been shown that part of the argument in the media. The media has talked about how it's, that these dictators, look what they're doing, and they're bringing in their military and doing everything that is going on in this country right now is what people have been seen, or they've been shown that sort of narrative in the media about all these other leaders in Central and South America and in the Middle East, and told that these people are the most evil people in the world and we need to go over there and give them democracy, right? And we are doing the same exact shit is happening on our land, and what is being done about it?
Yeah.